Today's shout out goes to my parents. Thanks, guys, for having me. Let's talk about a step up. Narnia Prince Caspian from the 80s. I mean, going from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, like what they had in that, to the Prince Caspian storyline, it's like they went forward in time, watched my video, then went back in time and fixed everything I said about what they could do to improve on The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. This movie, I mean, it's not the most perfect movie ever, but it's pretty freaking awesome. Anyway, let's get into the film itself. Whenever I say they improved on everything, they improved on everything. We're going to start with the effects. The effects are so much better in this one. You can tell I mean, there are a few scenes where they obviously skipped out on the effects. Like, for instance, whenever they transport our our other four heroes into Narnia, they kind of just have them like have this still image of them, and then they just swirl the image around on screen and have it go into a portal, and that's how they get there, but it's nothing that ruins the movie or hinders the watching experience. I mean, you're just kind of like, oh, that wasn't great, but I mean, it's not awful. And the fursuits, they still have those in it, but they are much better. For instance, they have shorter people play the animals in this one, and I thought it was perfect. I mean, they couldn't have picked a better way to do it. Not only that, just the costumes altogether seemed way more well put together than they were before. They seemed more fitting, and it also helped with the movie. It did not take away from it. It gave it sort of that Wizard of Oz type of vibe. You know how the Cowardly Lion looks? He is perfectly fine. He doesn't ruin the movie. He doesn't look creepy. He's there, and you can tell that he's supposed to be a lion, and it just makes it nice. And that is the same type of thing it has here. All the animals, all the people who play the animals do a great job, and that's another thing I want to talk about is the acting is so much better. Whoever wrote this, like the writing for how everything moves along within the film from book to screenplay is just so much better. Everything is an improvement.
Glenstone! Glenstone!
Another thing I want to touch on is the choreography for all the fights. It's not like Darth Maul versus Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn level fighting, but the fights in this are much better. They're entertaining, and sure, they're not the greatest. There's a few parts where they get a little bit slow, but it's nothing that ruins the battle, and you still feel the momentum going forward. It's not just like hey ya. Like they actually do things that people would do in a fight, and it makes it look more believable. The stakes are much higher. Like everything is sold so much better in this movie than what it was before, and it's honestly it's a very entertaining fantasy film. I was very entertained. I love this movie. Like I'm gonna watch it again, and I'm gonna watch it again. I mean, this is gonna be a regular on my regular watch list. It's not the most perfect movie in the world, but it's pretty dang well done. Like I don't know what else to say. I'm going to get into the plot, but I mean, it's like I said, just almost perfect all the way around with what they could have improved on. Not a perfect movie, but a perfect improvement. But with all those improvements, sadly comes just a very few amount of cons because they're still working out their storytelling kinks. They watched their last one and they thought of how to improve it, but sometimes, there's a few things they lose. For instance, I know I talked a lot about how the last one had a lot of filler. This one actually does not have enough. Like, it's time. It feels a little bit rushed. In fact, at the end, they just cut out from the book, like, uh, Lucy and Susan have this whole side plot where they're going to do something with Aslan. They have to cut that part, and those two just get sidelined for the whole movie. They just get kind of tossed aside because they didn't have enough time to tell their story. And that's where this movie falls apart a little bit. It doesn't like crumble, it doesn't ruin the whole watching experience, But by the end of this movie, like the end of these, because like I said, it was a mini series. But by the end of it, you kind of just sit there and think, man, I wish there could have just been a little bit more. I think they should have just extended it by an episode's length, or like partially of an episode. I don't know. It seemed like it was cut short, and you just seem like you want more from this movie. At least that's what my impression was from it. I mean, other people might have a different view, but like I said, the faster pace, I love it. It doesn't You don't linger on anything. It works out so well. Anyway, now let's get into the plot.
Finally!
So we follow this young boy. His name's Caspian, and he is the Prince of Narnia. We find out right away that the animals don't talk a lot anymore, and that it's much, much later than The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. We have a massive time gap between the two. Like I said, the animals don't talk as much anymore. The people are much more cruel. Everything is just much worse than what it used to be. And Caspian's having trouble because his aunt and uncle really don't want anybody to remember the time period that used to be. Anytime he talks about how Narnia used to be, they're like, oh, those are just fairy tales. They're false. Stop talking about such nonsense. Who's telling you this? And whenever they find out that it's his nurse, like apparently they never show the nurse in the movie, but it's this elderly woman who's been telling them these stories, and they schwack her right off the bat. They're like, oh, so she's the one who's been opening her mouth. Well, we'll deal with that. And then later in the movie, he's like, hey, where's my nurse? And this teacher's like,
well, don't worry about Omar. He's not with us no more.
But we really don't linger on the fact that his nurse is dead, because it's just kind of like, oh, well, that sucks. Anyway, you're my new teacher. Teach me about old Narnia. And he's like, of course not. Those absurdities. And he's like, we'll talk later. He's like, then later in the movie, he's like, meet me on the roof. We got a once in a lifetime view up there that even whenever you're as old as you can be, you're never going to see again. And it was something with like the planets and stuff. So they head up on the roof, and he's like, now I want to tell you, he's like, nobody can hear our voices no matter how loud we talk. And we got 6 empty rooms up under us, so nobody's going to find us. Which, I mean, it's smart to hide away, but in that context, the way he words it, it kind of just makes it look like he's going to murder him.
The virtue of this tower, sire, is that we have a long stair and 6 empty rooms beneath us. We cannot be heard or interrupted.
Peace in Caspian's life doesn't last for long, because we find out that the queen had a baby, which means that the king and the queen, who are the uncle and aunt of Caspian, need to kill Caspian so they can stay king and queen, and their son can be the next king. Because Caspian, even though his parents died, he's still the next in line for the throne, and they don't want that, so they're going to kill him. Cornelius, which is his teacher, I forgot to mention that. His teacher's name is Cornelius, in case you're wondering. In the middle of the night, wakes him up and says, come on, we gotta go. They're celebrating out there. The queen just had a baby. We gotta get out of here.
Come with me if you want to live.
Caspian, whenever he runs out into the woods, ends up being found by 2 dwarves and a badger, Trumpkin, Grumpy, and whatever the badger's name is. Also, the other dwarf's name's not Grumpy. I just call him that because he's really, really grumpy. So it just makes sense.
Kill it before it betrays us!
So whenever he talks to them, he asks, hey, have any of them seen Aslan? And they're like, oh, nobody's seen Aslan for years. And the 2 dwarves are like, he doesn't even exist anymore. But the badger says, you guys shut your mouths. He does exist. He is real, because it's been forever since anybody has seen Aslan, so their faith is falling. They no longer think he is real because they haven't seen him in such a long time. Like, not even anybody in their lifetime has ever met Aslan face to face.
Who believes in Aslan nowadays?
I do. Back there among the humans. Those who laugh at Aslan laugh at talking beasts and dwarves. Yet here you are.
The badger keeps her faith, and not only that, but Caspian has his faith that Aslan exists, and he has never even had any reason to believe Aslan exists. He didn't even have a reason to believe these magical creatures or the talking animals exist. And yet he is still a stronger believer than a dwarf who is a magical creature in this world. And I just think that is definitely something pretty cool that C.S. Lewis threw into his novel and was brought really well into this movie.
Doesn't whirling extravagant. You don't mean you believe in all them old stories?
I believe in the High King Peter and all the rest who reigned at Cair Paravel.
A few more things happen, and they end up going to this camp where all these magical creatures exist. And this is where we meet one of my favorite characters, Reepicheep. He's a mouse, but in this one, he's played by Warwick Davis, the guy who played Wicket in Star Wars. Which, I mean, that's a pretty good addition right there.
All I ask is that the king will put me in the front line. Sire, my name is Reepicheep.
So at the camp, Caspian hangs out for a little bit and reunites with Cornelius, his teacher who sent him that way. And not only that, but he finds all these other creatures, and they teach him a few different things. He gets some armor. But then the king and queen find out that he ran away and decide to attack the camp. And they have to go into this hiding place. But the one thing that really kind of disturbed me a little bit is whenever they found this camp, the first thing they did was kill the hedgehog. Like, that, I don't know, that's just an odd one to shoot at first. But as I said, the action in this movie, though, and the cinematography is just so much better. I loved the pacing of the film, too, up to this point. I think it was done really well. There wasn't anything they were missing too much. And I was pretty excited to see how the rest of it went, and I was not disappointed. As the film goes on, they end up having to go into this cave, and this is like where they find the stone table from the last movie, and he's told that while they're being attacked and stuff, Cornelius tells Caspian to blow on the horn and summon the kings and queens of Narnia from the past, and we all know who that is.
The Horn of Gondor. Boromir.
I'm sorry, that's the wrong fantasy franchise. Again, my apologies.
We are cold.
Yes, I feel it too.
Someone is dragging us. Dragging us where?
Peter, Lucy, Susan, and Edmund are back from the last movie. They were sitting on a bench, and then they're like, hey, I hear something kind of funky. And this is that part where I told you that transportation is like very cheap, like where they just like kind of freeze an image of them and have it swirl around on screen until it hits a portal. But yeah, they're back, and I honestly like their performances much better in this movie than I did the last one. I think they were more comfortable with the roles and more into it, and they actually seemed like the character instead of kind of just awkwardly standing in a clump together, just kind of not really knowing what to do, and they seemed a little bit more comfortable with this one, and I liked it a lot. And whenever they made it to Narnia, they found Trumpkin, who got separated from the rest of the group. I forget how that happened. I don't think they really explain it. But they find him. He's getting he's going to be drowned by these two guards, and Susan right off the bat just decides to kill these two because they found all their equipment and stuff in like a special cave or something. So first thing she does is shoot the two guards, and then them and Trumpkin go on an adventure together. And as Trumpkin and our four heroes go on this journey, Aslan keeps popping up to say,
It's a trap!
Now, that's another part of this movie I think they really stepped their game up on is Aslan. His mouth moves a little bit more when he's talking, so it makes it less uncomfortable, like I pointed out in the last one. And also, his voice just seems more in tune with everything. He shows a little bit more aggression, and as a lion should. And yet he's soft when it needs to be. I like his performance in this movie much better than the one before. Basically, everything I wanted to improve has improved. It wasn't 100%, but it's a tremendous amount. Like, it's a whole leap ahead of what it used to be, and I love it. honestly, this is my favorite of the older films so far. It's a really great movie. I'm sorry I keep going off track.
Aslan! Dear Aslan, love!
So meanwhile, while all our heroes and stuff are heading on their journey, back at the camp we have Caspian and his group, and they're still waiting on the kings and queens of Narnia to return because they don't know they're back in Narnia yet. So they're like, are they ever going to show up? I thought they would be here by now. We're getting worried. We're running out of options because the king and his men set up a blockade around their area so they cannot leave this magical cave. So they're either going to have to starve and die or go and fight a battle that they know they can't win. Because this main thing is to have strong faith in not only yourself but in Aslan, which is their version of God, and in others. And it shows that so well and portrays it so well in this movie. I wish the movie before this one, well, the miniseries, because they're miniseries, but I wish the adaptation before this would have done what this one is doing. But I mean, you'll have to learn whenever you make a few mistakes, and that's what they did with this one, and I highly appreciate that fact.
But what else can we do? But wait until help comes.
You're not still trying to tell us to pin our hopes on Aslan and King Peter and all the rest of it?
But while they are in this cave, sulking away, Nickabrick, which is Grumpy's real name, the wolf, and like a wolf that he found, and this witch all pop out of the dark, and they're like, we got this great idea. Let's bring back the villain from the last film. And then, the wolf just does like this circle thing, and they're going to try and summon the White Witch. And you don't actually get to see the White Witch. Like, there's nothing that you actually get to see of her, but they do talk about bringing her back from the dead. And the wolf's really creepy with it, though. He like goes up into their ears and starts whispering crap, and it's just, ugh, don't get that close to me. Like, ugh.
Where I bite, I hold till I die. I can fast 100 years and not die. I can lie 100 nights on the ice and not freeze.
Well, this is going on with Caspian. The kings and queens, Edmund, Peter, Lucy, and Susan are all end up finding Aslan. Oh yeah, they're also with Trumpkin. They end up finding Aslan, and he ends up telling them where to go and what to do. And this is the part I did not like about this movie is Susan and Lucy get sidelined because from here on out they're just pushed aside and not even talked about. Like he's like, all right, Edmund, Peter, you two go fight. Lucy, Susan, you two stay here. You're not to fight. Just stay here with me. We're going to go get reinforcements. And after that, like, there's this whole side quest with those two that you never see. They get sidelined. And it's kind of sad because, they're major characters. You want to see more of them. But they didn't have the runtime, and they had to cut that out. And that's my biggest con with this whole movie is just that I know I said I wanted the other one to go faster. This one I wanted to go a little bit slower, not a ton slower, just a little bit. All I'm looking for is an even pace here, guys. Once you just get that, it will all run smoothly. Just be able to put all your elements there without putting too much extra into these adaptions, and it'll all turn out fine. But this movie, like I said, it's still great. It doesn't ruin the film. It's just a little disappointing. So Peter and Edmund show up to the cave, and they see the creepy wolf and the witch getting ready to summon the White Witch. And then this fight breaks out, and at the end of it, Trumpkin, the witch that they had there, and the wolf, they're all dead, and Caspian is injured, so he cannot fight the king in a duel, and he can't go out to battle. But Peter comes up with this great idea. If he can challenge the king of the
Somebody! Oh!
He needs some milk!
If he can challenge the king to a duel, then if he wins that, there won't be as much bloodshed, and not as many people will die. He'll save a ton of lives that way. And it's honestly a pretty great idea on his part. The only thing is Caspian wants to be the one to fight. He's like, this is my battle. I need to fight him. He's my uncle. But Peter makes it very clear. He's like, you are injured, and I am a much better duelist than you. I have a better chance of winning in almost every way. He's like, you'll get your battle sometime, but that day is not today. And honestly, whenever it does get to the fight, I mean, it's a pretty good fight. Peter runs away for most of it because, of course, the king is a much better duelist. But it's not like a coward running away. He's kind of just trying to wear him out. And I think the whole thing just works out pretty well altogether. I thought, like I said, I think the choreography for this movie and the suspense that holds up, it does a whole lot better than its predecessor. It's just, like I said, almost a 100% improvement on the one before, and I loved it. So after that, this film kind of wraps up. They do have a small scuffle after the duel, whenever the king dies and stuff. Caspian's now going to be the king of Narnia, and the four main characters, our four other main characters, Peter, Edmund, Susan, Lucy, they all have to go back home. The only thing is, Peter and Susan are too old to come back to Narnia, so their adventures end right then and there. But Lucy and Edmund are still able to come back, and that sets up for the next movie because those two end up going to Eustace's house, and they go back to Narnia, and it leaves you on that cliffhanger there. This was technically a two-parter. It was Prince Caspian and the Dawn Treader. They're both connected, but they're two very different stories and very different, if from a film standpoint, also very different. And they both have the runtime of a full film. I mean, it's I think like it's an hour. One's 1 hour. I think Prince Caspian's an hour. Dawn Treader's hour and a half. But I decided to do them separately because, they're two very different stories and they deserve their own time to be talked about. I didn't think I should rush those two. Well, that about wraps it up. I would give this movie an A. It doesn't mean whenever I give a movie an A, it does not mean it's perfect. It doesn't mean it's like a cinematic masterpiece. All it means is this movie went and set out what it was supposed to do. And it does it in an entertaining way in which you'll be engaged the whole time. It's a movie. It does what a movie's supposed to do, and that's what this movie does. For instance, like I said, it tells the story of Prince Caspian. It does it in a fun manner, and you'll enjoy it the whole time. It has its flaws, but it deserves this A because it still does an incredible job at telling the story. And I think it's perfect in its own right. But anyway, what do you think of this film? Have you seen Prince Caspian from the 1980s? If so, what did you think about it? If you liked it, please leave in the comments. And if you didn't like it, tell me why. But I honestly want to see what your opinion is of it. And if you have any movies you would want to see me review, I'm going to be reviewing a couple after this whole Chipmunk and Narnia fiasco. Please leave in the comments what you want to see me do because I'm going to be picking one movie from each comment section to review. So anyway, this has been a Random Richie review. I'm Roman Richie. And if you're watching this at night, have a great night, or have a great morning in the morning, or have a great afternoon. And if you're on the toilet, it's time to wipe. Goodbye, everyone.